Wasteland 3, the third game in the Wasteland series, the series that laid the foundation for the post-apocalyptic RPG, inspiring games like Fallout among countless others. In fact, the guy who made Wasteland went into making the first Fallout game, Brian Fargo. I, as you may or may not know, am a massive fan of Fallout. I've played every game in the series besides 76, and I'm well aware of the Wasteland game's presence and influence. I've just never played them. And my boy infamous Sir Hellfire kindly recommended that I check out the fairly recent Wasteland 3 on my Discord, so I did. Without playing the prior two games in the series, I booted up what was promised to be a 40+ hour experience and was absolutely floored with the game immediately. Wasteland 3 wasted absolutely no time showing me what it was, and from the first hour to the 50th, I was lost in this well-crafted masterpiece. Here's how the first hour of Wasteland 3 roped me in and made me binge this entire game. Soft spoiler warning, there will be spoilers for the first hour or so of this game, as well as some minor events throughout its entirety. It's really no big deal, these moments hold little weight in the grand scheme of things, and I barely even consider them spoilers. However, if Wasteland 3 is a game that you've been considering playing and you want to go in fresh as daisies, then just stop watching the video and get the game. It's a 10 out of 10, do recommend. I even have a GOG code for you to use for a little bit of a discount, 60 to 70% off or so, you can't beat it, so hop on it. This deal's only live for like 10 days, there's a link in the description for a great deal. Wasteland 3 opens with a brief introduction to your group, the Desert Rangers. It gives a brief backstory to their plight in Arizona and sets up the reasoning for the group coming to the ice-covered Colorado. Me not knowing the history of the series, I thought this was plenty of information to dive in. I know who I am, I know why I'm here, and I'm ready to fuck shit up. Quickly, that shit goes out the window. Your team is ambushed, and what was 50 Rangers is now a handful of stragglers fighting to survive these ruthless animals called the Dorseys. After the opening cutscene, you now have to take charge of making your characters. You start with 2 people in your squad, and while there are some pre-made options, I of course want to make the game my own. The creation system is incredibly in-depth, and it reminds me a lot of the classic Fallout RPGs, with the stat allocation and the quirks and such. It really is quite daunting, especially when you don't know what's best for the game moving forward. You choose the appearance, even with custom portraits if you choose, background, which is like an inherent perk of your character, quirks, which are also like a perk, but they also have a downside to them, and you choose a starting weapon, and of course your stats and skills to get going. Going all in with the post-apocalypse vibes, I decided to theme my duo on some founders of radiation science. First up is Wilhelm Röntgen, the man who produced and detected the first X-ray. Of course his background is bookworm, which makes him a nerd, but also gives him a bonus of 5% experience, and his stats being intelligence, of course, as well as luck, because luck raises your penetration, and X-rays are good at penetrating. Skills were across the board. I decided to stick him with a sniper rifle for damage, and then some weird science and nerd stuff because that just sounds appropriate, and then kiss ass and toaster repair because, well, I really don't know why, it just seems right. And for his quirk, I went with Poindexter, which boosts skill points received at the cost of losing conditioning. And at his side is Ernest Rutherford, the big boss man who discovered the concept of radioactive half-life, the element radon, and he differentiated and identified both alpha and beta particles. His character in particular is based on the alpha particle, the most deadly form of radiation, but it's more like a blunt force that isn't able to penetrate as well as X-rays or gamma radiation, so of course Rutherford is equipped with blunt melee weapons as his go-to, starting with a pipe wrench but eventually a hammer because reasons. His background is lethal weapon, which increases melee damage. His quirk is blunderer, which does the same at the cost of some crit chance, but who needs to crit when you're gonna one-shot with a hammer anyway? Stats were coordination and strength, which just seems right when you're swinging heavy objects, and for skills I went simple with melee damage, first aid, and mechanics. These are my dudes, ready to bang and penetrate in every sense of the word. After 50 hours in this game, I would never make these my starting characters again, but going in blind and not giving a fuck about min-maxing my experience, I couldn't have asked for a more fun combination. But enough about my radiation boys, onto the game. This is obviously a glorified tutorial of sorts, but when games put effort into making what could be a boring training session into constructive and narrative missions, I love it. I talked about this in my recent bully video. Integrated tutorials are fantastic. Even though this initial encounter is an introduction to the combat mechanics, it's pretty daunting. You have 8 psychotic enemies surrounding you, and yeah, your duo still has a few rangers still breathing at their flanks, but they don't last long at all. And here's where I realized maybe melee weapons wasn't the best way to start the game, because now I need to run into 8 dudes that have rifles and pistols to hit them with a wrench. But fuck it, we out here. Eventually a robot spider thing also shows up, and you get to blow it up with a cannon that's on the roof of your vehicle, and you leave this frozen lake covered in blood and gore. Mission success. You loot some of the bodies, and then you talk with your major about getting onto the top of the dam to confront the ambush party, splitting ways with her and then moving forward. From here you get some light exploration, you witness the scattered bodies of your team, some of them with descriptive observation messages detailing the gruesome aspects of their final moments. You even witness some of your team getting their entrails ripped out and used as gory confetti for a one-man dance party. Another dude gets blown into a fine red mist as well. This starts to set the stage for this environment of post-apocalypse Colorado, a frozen and unforgiving worldscape littered with unavoidable death. Up the hill from here you find a live ranger held at gunpoint that you can actually get the chance at saving. And trust me, it is just a chance. If you don't have the correct skill allotment at level freaking 1, this girl right here is dead. Lucky for me, Rankin has kiss ass, so you're able to persuade the gun-toting lunatic to leave, sparing the ranger named Private Jody Bell. After a brief conversation with her, you also find out that there's another ranger out there still alive named Major Tom. A little confusing since you already have one major, but hey, you need all the warm bodies you can get. She gives you some cigarettes that apparently will get him to follow you, and I guess just being a fellow ranger isn't enough for him. Moving forward down the next hill, you're about to enter into another battle. Since we sent the gun-toting lunatic running off, saving Private Bell, they were able to alert the next group of our presence, and in return, they slaughter some hostages as we show up, that we may have been able to save if we had the drop on them. But, as you'll learn in this game, there's often not a correct answer to anything. Every decision has pros and cons, and very rarely is there a case where everyone wins. Even though there are a ton of ways to royally fuck up a situation and have everyone lose, Colorado is just an unforgiving place. Anyway, onto the battle here. This battle emphasized learning the cover and flanking mechanics of battle, having different objects to use as cover from various different planes and vantage points. I feel like this would work better if you had 2 guys with guns, but since I wanted a dude with a hammer running around, I just made do, resorting to using a few more med packs than I would have otherwise. Here there's also an oil tank that can be used to cause some havoc, and I learned that walking through fire is bad. Who would have thunk? As you make your way down the next path onto the dam, you come across a welcome message from the Dorseys. Welcome to Colorado, drawn in blood on the dam, right behind the hanging corpses of your fellow rangers, as well as the splattered bodies of men and women thrown from the top of the dam to their deaths, that you also get to witness here. This scene right here, I think, is the moment that sold me on this game. These vibes are everything that I want from post-apocalyptic fiction. Next up is a stealth introduction. There's a patrolling spider robot thing that you're supposed to sneak around as it patrols the area, as well as a machine gun turret on a rooftop. However, since Rutherford has mechanic skill, I was able to burst this water pipe that freezes the spider, and Rankin has nerd stuff, which allows me to disable the turret system, rendering the need for stealth non-existent. I got smart boys, but not very sneaky boys. There's also a lock gate here that can't be picked because neither of my guys have lockpicking skills, but the cool thing about this game is that you can just bust down doors and obstacles. Who needs lockpicking when you have a hammer? This was something that I thought was really cool in the game Weird West that I recently played. The same mechanic is in that game, with simple wooden doors being able to be knocked or shot down, and heavier doors being vulnerable to explosions and such. I just love this mechanic. It makes so much sense. We have all encountered the ratty looking wooden door in various games that we just can't get through because it's locked. It is right after this gate though that I am punished for not having any perception skill, as Rutherford stumbles into a landmine as he tries to open a chest. Just goes to show how often and varied skill checks and encounters are in this game. There are several just in this first portion of the game that persist throughout the entire game. Something that I wish Fallout still did in its modern games. You get dialogue options depending on skills, but very rarely do they come up in the environments other than hacking or lockpicking. But from here you head on to the climax of this introduction, the top of the dam. Jarrett Dorsey is the man you talk to at the top of the dam, the leader of the Dorsey Brigade, and he's responsible for this ambush. He is crazy-eyed and manic, with bones covering his clothing and fresh human intestines roped over his neck like fucked up Mardi Gras beads. That seems to be the Dorsey thing though. Like the guy we saw dancing in the entrails of a fallen ranger, the Dorseys get genuine joy from slaughtering people and playing with their organs and viscera. He monologues briefly about slaughtering people and running Colorado. Rutherford got the option to taunt the bluntness of his knife with a melee weapon skill check, angering Jarrett, making him threaten the blunt blade of his knife on you, before abruptly losing half of his head. Your major, lying in a pool of her own blood, blows his head to pieces, making his comrades lose their mind before starting the final battle of the dam.
Holy shit! They done killed Jarrett!
Like many larger battles in Wasteland 3, this fight has some excellent music accompanying it, a slow and somber rendition of Washed in the Blood of the Lamb. This moment right here hits so hard, something about it is just surreal. This is the moment where I went from really liking this game to absolutely loving it. You rip through the remaining Dorsey fighters before finding your major bleeding out in denial of the gravity of her wounds. Rutherford gets another option for a skill check here with first aid, allowing you to give her some medication to relax her and essentially euthanize her. You came into Colorado with such a large group, and it's now just Rankin and Rutherford, and Private Bell if you saved her. It's such a grim and troubled start that caught me so off guard, and I just love it so much. Right after this is also where you meet Major Tom, a cat in a hat that loves cigarettes. So if you whip out the pack that Jody Bell gave you, then you now have Major Tom as a companion. The mild introduction to the goofy side of this game. That's just as good as the gruesome side. That's the start of the game. You take the Ranger vehicle into Colorado Springs next. You meet with the Patriarch, the reason that the Rangers came to Colorado in the first place. A man who rules Colorado with a very American mixture of propaganda and violence. The guy sits on a throne of decommissioned warheads and missiles like a modern day version of the Game of Thrones. You learn about his family troubles and his motivations, and he even offers up a captured Dorsey that he offers for you to kill in retaliation for the ambush. Rankin wastes no time with his sniper rifle just to do so, and the pace just keeps up from there. This is the brilliance of Wasteland 3. It sets the stage so beautifully, showing you the fucked up reality of the situation of the world, and somehow you get shocked at the amount of shit that you encounter in this game. You meet different groups of people. Denver is filled with people that worship Ronald Reagan. Every woman there is also a wife of Reagan, all named Nancy, and it's like the real Reagan too. An AI has converted all of his ideologies and speeches into a form of Ronald Reagan artificial intelligence to run Denver. But it doesn't stop there. There's religious extremists that tie flayed open bodies to kites to feed the sky gods. A commune of sentient robots and synths. People a little too obsessed with their Joker cosplays. And many more unique and frightening individuals that you can approach and treat in a variety of different ways. You can befriend cannibals. You can work for the Patriarch. You can kill the Patriarch. You can arrest his kids and bring them back to Colorado. You can work for his kids and overthrow their father, or you can slaughter every last one of them. I honestly cannot recommend this game enough. Even if you don't like CRPGs, please try this game. And I'm not a giant fan of the genre myself. Turn-based combat is lame in my opinion, but this game excels at everything, including that. And if you're a fan of Fallout, especially classic Fallout, do yourself a favor and play this game. This game is what Fallout 3 should have been if it followed the first two games appropriately. And that's coming from someone who actually loves the current Fallout 3. Alright, that's enough bubbling over this game. I just wanted to make this short video to share it and try to get as many people as possible to check it out, because it's a game that just needs more love and attention. I'd like to thank my supporters on Patreon for holding it down. Gone with the Schwinn.
You think that's a Schwinn?
No!
Kid Kingpin, Doug Smith, Anonymous Starkweather, Sofa Pals Productions, Crash Bandicoot 25, Zachary Parkerson, Potty, and Yeah Man. Yay Man? Yeah, Yay Man. Thank you all for watching. I hope to see you next time. Peace.